the whole big picture, small picture, and how that happens, and whether we're born like this or whether it's our environment, John.
I don't think that it's environment. I think it's like being left-handed, right-handed. The way I look at big picture, small pictures is left-handed, right-handed. So it's really which way you want to go. So when I teach big picture, small picture, I make sure I explain right away. Everybody can look small picture to the details. Everybody can look big picture to the context. Everybody can do it. Because the minute you say small picture, big picture, people go, well, I think I'm both.
Mm.
Yes, you have the ability to be both. So what I say is really this is a measure of which direction you want to go for energy. So whatever you're talking about, what direction do you like to go? Do you like to get more into details? And we call that analysis. Or do you want to get more into the context, into the impact? We call that synthesis. So which direction you like to go? And the way that I actually measure this is I say, how far can you go in the other direction before you get drained? So, for example, somebody who is super big picture, they can go one step small and that's it. And I know a guy who said when I taught this, he goes, "Oh, when I was in high school, I would be okay for the first 2 weeks of math, and then I wouldn't learn a thing." And he's super big picture. And the reason is that first 2 weeks of math is all just one step small. Here's how you set up an equation. Here's the things we learn. You just learn a bunch of things. All of a sudden, that third week, okay, we're going to start pulling it together. Here's the word problem. Now you take it apart. That's one step small. Now, what equations would fit these parts? That's another step small. He's gone. He's out. He doesn't have any energy. He doesn't care. I'm big picture, which is like the next step down. I'm not super big picture like that. So I can go 2 or 3 steps small. So when I used to run this chemical company and I had these regional managers and these people reporting to me, we would have a weekly meeting in the conference room and we would go through everything. And these like regional managers would say, okay, I'm handling this region of the country. So that's one step small, it's one portion. And I have these distributors I'm selling to. Okay, now it's broken up another step small. And in this distributor, they're having this issue. Well, now I'm starting to lose energy. Now we're 3 steps small. And now I'm like, okay, okay. And I'm trying to hold on. And if they got any smaller than that, I would check out. I would just go, I would look to other people to handle it and then come back. Now, when I do a project, like when I put together, when I write a book, for instance, I outline the book. It's going to have part one, part two, this, and then here's the chapters that'll be underneath each of those parts. And now here's what a generic chapter is going to look like. And then I get up and walk away. I go do something else. And when I come back, I start with this is what the chapter looks like. And then I go 2 or 3 steps small. So some people out there may have realized this about themselves and they've been adjusting without knowing it. They do something and then they have to get up and change to something else. Then they can come back to it because you're resetting the context. Now the context is the chapter and then going 2, 3 steps small. And then just slightly big picture means you could keep going small like that forever. And then the small is the same way. How many steps big can you go? And this actually is really important in the school because if you have somebody who's super small picture, how do you motivate them to get something done? Why do I have to learn this? So you get a good grade. Why do I need a good grade? So you can pass the class. Why do I need to pass the class? So you can graduate. You know what? That's 3 steps big, and I don't care. I can't see graduation. And then they just don't do anything. So it's interesting. I think big picture and small picture affect people more than we realize, especially when it comes to persuading and arguing with people.
That's really fascinating, John, to think about it like that. I'd never considered why I stop and start something. So that's given me a completely different, okay, maybe that's why I do it. I used to think, oh, it's because like I can't sit still or like I'm too fidgety, but I know I can sit for ages and sit and paint. But yeah, there are often some times where I'll start something, stop, and then go back to it. Now,
I think if you look at it, in the future and notice if you never get in 2 or 3 steps detail, because I think you're a big picture like me, if you
yeah,
never get 2 or 3 steps detail, then you could sit there in that for hours. But the minute you got to go a little detail, it's like you're drained. And so it's not you have ADHD or anything, it's that you're losing energy. And it's good to get up, do something else, and then come back to the thing in that context and go small from there. So yeah.
yeah. I used to say I do circles round the house for the same thing. But
Nice.
that makes sense. That makes
Take
sense.
a lap. Yeah, go take a
Yeah.
lap.
Doing circles round the house. I do a bit of this, a bit. Now, I'm left-handed, John. Are you
Okay.
left-handed? Are you
Nope.
left-handed?
Nope. Nope.
If you're right-handed and I'm left-handed, how can we both be big picture?
Yeah, I don't think it has any. What I meant was when I said it's kind of like handedness, I think it's something in the brain and it's not connected to anything else. I don't think being left or right-handed is connected to whether you're big picture or small picture or whether you're external or internal processing. I don't think it has anything to do with any of that. It's just a separate effect.
So we're talking about the right hemisphere of the brain versus the left. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, with big picture, small picture, we are talking about that. So
Okay.
what happens is that the left hemisphere of your brain is small picture, the right hemisphere is big picture. So,
Okay.
but it doesn't, so that's just so what that means is this is that when you start to think of something, so what people thought was your your left or right brain, actually you're not. You use both sides of the brain to feel settled on something. It's which half of the brain do you start your um your thought on. So what happens when they look under MRI, a big picture person, when you ask them a question, they go into the right half of their brain to set a context, and then they go the left half of their brain to fill in the details. And it sort of to confirm it. So people say like 2 plus 2 is 4, and 4 is two groups of two. That's correct. I just use both half of my brains, but it's the order. So if you think about it, I think half the people are left brain, half the people are right brain, meaning they start in that half of the brain, but you use both halves. But if you notice, a right brain, a big picture brain, would learn reading through whole language. A left or small picture brain would learn reading through phonics. So what happens is they do these studies, which way works, and it's simply do they have more left or right brain kids in the testing? But if you understood the uniqueness of the kid, you would be able to go, hey, you learn whole language because you're a big picture. You learned phonics, you're small picture, and everybody would learn well. But what we do is we do these studies. One half kind of, gets ahead of the other half. And then, 53% to 47. So we do everything whole language, and half these kids can't read. And then they switch it around years later, and then the other half of the kids can't read. And the thing is what if we really understood the uniqueness of the kids, we'd be able to teach them. We'd be able to teach them all. But we don't do that step.
So I just heard you say left. The people who use sort of the left hemisphere of their brain first will deal with phonics, correct? Learn through phonics.
Yeah, yeah, they would be through phonics. They'd be small picture and they'd be through phonics.
So that's small picture. So see, there's a contradiction here because Alex couldn't learn through phonics at all. Okay.
Right, right. Because
So,
he's big picture.
that means he's big picture. So why does he get so OCD all the time, John? On a
Because great question. Just great question. So that's the thing is how big picture is he? I think he might be bigger picture than you and I. And so what happens is when these kids, so the issue with somebody who's super bigger picture than you and I, is it's hard for them to focus, and it's hard for 'em, like I said about my friend, to go one step small. So you help them go one step small, and then if you have to have them go two steps small, they're out. They lose all their energy, and they're going to go do something else because you're really looking for energy. ADHD is this person. It's a coping mechanism looking for energy. I want to have energy immediately. So we're humans. We're driven by energy. So if you really understand the energy thing, then you could diagnose all these situations really quickly. So Alex is perhaps super big picture. If you take him more than one step small, he's he loses all his energy, and then he goes and looks for something else because he's big picture to give him energy. And then that could look like ADHD or autism or Asperger's, when in fact it's just somebody looking for energy because he's super big picture.
Okay,
And so
so
that's where, when I was in the school, so what happens when you go into, I went into schools to help people, but obviously the teachers that needed the most help were teachers who were teaching special ed. Like middle school special ed teachers in the United States don't last 5 years. They quit before 5 years. And so what we were doing was you want to talk about a profession that loses all their energy. It's middle school special ed teachers. And what we did was we helped these special ed teachers finish the year with more energy than they began, which means we could do that for anybody. They're just someone can hold on to, a high school teacher could teach for 10 years before they lose all their energy. A kindergarten teacher could teach their whole life because those kids are in flow and they're surrounded by them. But so the thing is when we go in and help these middle school, what you're always dealing with is kids that are super big picture or super small picture. The school, if you want, like, here's the thing to understand about school. Public education is built for the person who's very slightly small picture. So they're accurate. 2 plus 2 is 4. It's not 2 plus 2 is not 4.0000000000000. Okay, that's super small picture. It's accurate, but we don't need that. So we don't want somebody who's super small picture. We don't want somebody who's super big picture. And then when it comes to internal and external processing, external people are rude, internal people are slow. You want somebody who's very slightly internal. They don't interrupt you, and the minute you're done asking the question, they immediately answer. And then when it comes to tangible drivers, you want somebody who's compassion, how or why, giver, how and why, server, how. That's what school is made for. School is made for this very slightly internal, very slightly small picture, very in the middle, compassion, giver, server. And so really, every valedictorian is measured by how close they are to that ideal. That's really what we're measuring. We're not measuring who's the smartest. We're measuring who is closest to this ideal. So all I like to say when I go to school isn't built for anyone. There's nobody that has a uniqueness that fits school. But the world is built for everybody. So if you understand your uniqueness and you use school to learn how you uniquely learn and motivate yourself, then you're going to be successful when you get out of school. Instead, everybody wants to focus on getting all the kids to the middle of the spectrum. So instead of helping Alex, like what I've done with people like Alex is when you give them a test, you write one question on every page. You don't need to give them a page with 10 questions. Because while he's doing one, he's looking at 2 and 3, and he's not answering one. So what you do is, or you can do it through a computer, it's one question at a time because he's so big picture. And that's how you help him. So those are the type of things that I was doing in the schools to help these kids who are in special ed learn. And really, the people who changed the world would all be in special ed. If you take everybody who changed the world and put them into public education in the last 500 years, 1,000 years, they all would be in special ed right now. Because none of them are very slightly internal, very slightly small picture, compassion, giver, server. None of them are that. None at all.